Hello and welcome to MLOps Minutes. In this episode, we're going to raise our pencils a little, look up a little, and talk a little bit about annotation. Here we go. So remember, to train an AI, we need data and associated responses. We'll write a machine learning algorithm that will generate the rules. The machine will learn from experience. The heart of the matter, really, gold is data. Remember, no arms, no chocolate, no data, no AI. If you've got data, answers that are only 70% right, your AI won't be able to get better answers than 70%. That's easy enough to understand. There's one key thing you won't be able to do without, and that's annotating the answers. To increase the quality of your data, you need to enter a phase of annotation, of labeling. To illustrate our examples, we're going to start by zoning in cats. And here's something extremely important to understand. You'll need an extremely clear and concise annotation guideline that all annotators will have to follow. In fact, this guideline is going to have to live constantly, evolving all the time according to the cases you come across. The idea is that all annotations must be extremely consistent and always done in the same way. Otherwise, the AI won't learn, won't understand what it's got, and give them bad results. Let's take this little cat and illustrate it by example for simplicity's sake. Let's zone it. Now, it's pretty simple. I've zoned my little cat well. Now let's take this little cat generated with an AI. It's the same. It could be more complicated, but no. I just put because it was beautiful. I zoned in on my kitty. We're going to fall into a slightly more complicated use case. Here, I have two heads and a separate tail. A lot of questions arise. Let's focus on the cat on the right. I'm going to zap its head. And here I've zoned its head. But just by zoning his head, I realized that there are little mustache hairs here sticking out. And in fact, I can annotate in two different ways. I can annotate either the cat with the whiskers or the cat without the whiskers. And in fact, there's a choice to be made, to be shared with all those who annotate on the project. For example, let's say we annotate the cats with whiskers. That way, all annotations will take the cats with whiskers. Second, do I include the tail? Because I deduced that the tail comes from the cat on the right? Well, there's no way of knowing. And so in the rule, we'll say, in the case where the tail is separated, I don't take the tail. Even if there's only one cat and it's separated, we won't take the tail. So here too, if the second cat we take the tail, we won't know which cat the tail is on. So you have to make a choice. We don't take the tail at all. So in the end, the cat on the left is annotated using the same rules. We take the mustache, the face, and that's it. And the little hairs at the top of the eyebrows. In the end, I end up with two annotations on this image, and that's it. And this is really something key. It's really this annotation guideline. And if you're a data scientist, or if you're in charge of giving images to be labeled or annotated to a team that's going to annotate, what you need to understand is that you need to annotate thousands of images yourself before you start. To give it to a team to do on an industrial scale. And you also have to, let's take another use case. For example, the transcription of text, for example, from a YouTube video. So as you may have noticed, I often say, imagine you hear the phrase minutes in my MLOps, that's top. Well, you can have someone transcribe it like that, writing all the words minutes in MLOps, that's great. But you can also choose to say, I'm going to write les minutes in mes MLOps with 3 little dots, c'est top. Or we can choose to say minutes in my MLOps, that's great. It's perhaps a little better for transcription, but then again, there are choices to be made, annotation guidelines to be followed. We can also put minutes in MLOps, comma, that's top. And we can also ask the question, why do we put an exclamation mark and not just a dot? Well, you can't see the dot here because it's hidden by my head, but the exclamation mark can also be debatable. And that's really the heart of the matter, is the annotation. Well, that's not bad for this part. What you need to understand is that on certain use cases, you'll need experts. You really do need experts to annotate the data. A simple use case, for example, is the detection of lung cancer. You'll need doctors who are trained to detect cancer. In this use case, the good thing is that AI is going to be able to learn very well, to have very good answers because we'll know in time whether a person is really ill or not. This makes it possible to have AIs that have very good predictive qualities. What's going to happen is that if you want to have consistent high-quality annotations, set up cross-annotation, i.e. have the same document annotated several times. This will enable you to check that the same annotation rules have been followed during the annotation phase. Now remember, data is alive, not in the sense that it lives, but what happens is that your project and the data it receives as input will evolve. What we call a data drift, which means that your AI hasn't been trained on this type of data and will start to respond poorly to unfamiliar data. The small examples here on the screen show that imagine an AI trained on the old ID card, and it receives news. It won't be able to read it well, or not read them at all. And the key is that you have to be proactive. So you have to monitor your production, drifts, and be aware when there's a problem. And remember, this is the life cycle of an AI project. Imagine you're in production and you start to experience a drift. Already, if you're not able to detect it, you're likely to run into problems. But imagine that you do detect it. You need to have industrialized being able to retrieve the data. So the feedback loop. So what is the feedback loop? It enables you to retrieve data in production as well as responses. You can even afford it in production. Users correct errors and annotate the data. On the other hand, what's going to happen is these data, these answers, can always be wrong. Typically, at the MLOps Python canteen, you put your tray under a camera, and an AI will tell us all the items on the tray and give us the price. But what often happens is Guillaume Chervet puts on a cherry Coke, and the AI detects a Coca-Cola. And since it costs less, Guillaume Chervet won't correct because he prefers to pay less. So the data is false. So what needs to be done? The annotation and labeling phase must be industrial. And if you haven't planned for that, and you suddenly have a drift in production on a major application, you could be in real trouble. So the industrialization of this labeling part is simply non-negotiable. So what's the bottom line? It's that several rules, is that data is something very important. Annotation guidelines need to be put in place. You'll need experts for certain use cases. Implement cross-annotation to increase data quality and industrialize the labeling stage and the feedback loop. This is non-negotiable. It's very important. And the last message I can add to the conclusion is that what can I say? I didn't mention the pre-annotation of data, but yes, you yourself have to annotate the data from thousands of documents to understand that anything that can speed up the annotation phase must be put in place. So if you can pre-annotate the data to speed up the annotation phase, do it. Thank you very much, and see you soon for more videos.